Hello there. This is Dan Hertzka, and this is Mario Brothers. This is a game that I made with one other person at grad school here at the Florida Interactive Entertainment Academy at the University of Central Florida. So I'm just going to run through the game for a bit. All the levels are loaded from a text file, so I'm going to jump around in phases. It's not going to go sequentially. Just save you some boredom, save us all some time. But I'm just going to talk about my contributions to this and how the whole thing kind of works. So, as you see right now, it's Mario Brothers. It should look a lot like what you remember from childhood or from before you were born, depending on who you are. And we did our best. That's what our goal was when we set out. We planned to have as many, or to be as close as possible to the original. Sorry, but that almost died. To the original. Our professor is a huge fan of the game, so that was a little added pressure. So we started by going to a European. The only ROM we could find of the NES version of the game was from a European build or a European release. So it was at 50 frames per second, and to try to get all the movement variables, we just went into the hex editor that comes with the ROM, and over the course of a day mined out the jump data and the movement data to at least have a starting point. We had to tweak it a bit because that was 50 frames per second, and no doubt they were using fixed point math because this was all assembly when it was written. So this is much smoother. Overall, the movement feels very faithful to the original, but certainly less choppy on account of the frame rate and the floating point math, which is not a bad thing. So yeah, we're already to phase 5 here. You see that we had the turtles already. Here we have the crabs, and just like you would expect, they all get angry. There's 3 stages of anger, and they get angry if you flip them over a course of time, and that time decreases with the level that you're on. In a certain amount of time, they flip back over, and then they start walking faster, and they change color. And so we just flip the sprite on that. So anyway, a bit of background I probably should have opened with. This game was written entirely in C++. It was originally written for the PC using OpenGL, and then part of the assignment was to then port it over to the Xbox, the original Xbox console, and that obviously used DirectX 8, I think it was. So a bit dated, no doubt, but still gave the overall console porting experience. And so to deal with all that, we had to, or at least the way we did deal with it, was with some utility functions. So all of our different draw calls, depending on the graphics library that we were using, went into our... there you go. It's hard to talk and play at the same time. So all of our different graphics libraries, or not all of, the 2 different graphics libraries, both had their own chunk of that utils class, and with just a simple pound define. So if Xbox mode was defined, or is defined, then it tries to use all the DirectX calls, and if it's not defined, then it does everything with OpenGL for the PC. So here's an example of the fastest possible enemy in the game. This is a crab that they have 2 stages. Once you hit them once, they get angry, and so that was a 3rd level crab who was angry. So they're pretty quick little buggers. So just like the original, we've got the POW, and the POW disappears. It's got 3 uses. Actually, I should probably just show you in the next one. But it replenishes at these bonus stages, like you see right here. And here we are at phase 17. So at this point, the whole level, or everything is fixed from this point on. The only thing that happens is that you get more hazards. But as you've noticed, as we've gone through, we had different types of platforms composed of different tiles. But at this point, these are all just yellow pipes, and the top 2 pipes stay frozen. And so from 17 to 99, there's not a whole lot of variation visually, which is faithful to the original. On the line of other faithful topics, or faithful inclusions here, let's talk about a little bit about the collision. So note right there, Mario, as soon as just their midpoint of any dynamic object, you saw it right there with the crab, as soon as the midpoint goes over the edge of a tile, that counts as a fall. And so you can jump just right there, and that's That's verified from the original. So it actually made a really significant difference as far as having it feel right and feel like the original. Oh. So when you collide with an enemy, however, you use your entire bounding box versus, their entire bounding box versus the player's center. And finally, when enemies collide with one another, they use their entire bounding box. So that was a bit of an interesting, Sorry, things are getting a bit hectic here. So note that I'm on ice that's been... Oh, darn. So these platforms are frozen by those freezies. When they hit the middle of a platform, any platform, they stop. Any platform that's not frozen, excuse me, they stop and freeze the whole thing. And then the friction that's applied to the player to make them decelerate goes down. And so note that I have a harder time actually maneuvering around here. So what do we got left? We got 2 enemies left. Things can really get out of hand fast. Also, note that you can kill the freezy before they fully... Oh, hey, it's a good time for a POW. Boom. So that's how POW works. Effects... Oh, or I can undo the whole thing. That's fine, too. Alright, we got 1 more enemy left. So, let's... Oh, and I died. I don't want this video to be too long, I don't want to bore you to death here, but the sprite animations are about what you'd expect. Everything exists on a single sprite sheet, and so all the different objects, there's a whole sheet full of pound defines for their location on the sprite sheet. And then when they animate, they just obviously change their locations there. Every single object that you see rendered is inheriting from, aside from the background, is inheriting from a base game object class, and then that splits off into a dynamic and a static, and the dynamic splits off into the player, the hazards, and the enemies, and the enemies obviously then split off into the different types of enemies. So the base class takes care of drawing every object, and it's not even virtual. There's no need. Every class just has its own. That's the one thing they all share, is that they're all sprites. As far as the static objects, it's actually, they all have their own kind of flavor, because the POW has to handle its own shrinking. Whenever you hit the POW, it obviously has those 3 visual representations, so it has to switch its sprite around and keep track of how many times it's been hit. The platforms, it's pretty interesting to get it to look like that. It's just a 3-tile wide sprite, if you will. Oh no. Trying to get to focus here. I might just die and we'll start again. Talk about stuff. But you'll notice there's a 3-tile sprite here for my overall animation, and that gets triggered with the tile in the middle. So each tile, or each platform here, is composed of a bunch of individual 8-pixel by 8-pixel tile sprites, and it's a separate class. So those are all static game object classes, but then the platforms themselves are counted, or they're just a whole separate class that's populated with those tiles. Maybe I can get this. Ooh, yep, here we go. Bullseye. Whew. Nailed it. Alrighty. So is there anything else to talk about here? Oh, note the splash next time something dies. Pretty proud of that. Super unnecessary little bit of polish. Watch it, watch it. Splash. The freezies are also pretty cool. I mentioned them though. Once they go to the center of a platform, they freeze it, and boom. And then slowly from that center tile outward, it changes the sprite, and then once that's all done, it changes the friction that you experience as a player on the board. And so note that things get pretty out of hand here if you don't take care of business, and that's exactly the way it felt in the original Mario Brothers. It's a good time for a POW. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. Also note that 1600, we do have the bonuses implemented. If you kick 2 things off within, I think it's within like 1 second of each other, it's extremely close. Then you get a doubled score. Darn. All right, well there's game over. Was that about a 10-minute run? It's not my best. but I did all right. So I just want to make sure I covered everything here. If you want to check out the whole source code, feel free. I'm happy to send it to you. I'm not sure if I will post it up just because I don't want to get a cease and desist from Nintendo for basically redistributing a PC version of their IP. So yeah, but if you want to check it out, by all means, please do. If you watched this far in the video, then also thank you. I really appreciate that, and I hope you got a kick out of hearing how this works. Yeah, thanks a lot, and thanks for coming by the site.